Right now, as you read this, there's a good chance your body is preparing to do something almost every human has done today, and science still cannot fully explain why. You feel the slow stretch in your jaw, the deep pull of air into your lungs, the brief pause, then the release, a yawn. It can strike when you're tired, bored, anxious, or even just because someone nearby did it first. Fetuses yawn in the womb. Fish, turtles, birds, and nearly every vertebrate with a jaw do it. Yet after centuries of observation, the most common explanation people offer, that we yawn to get more oxygen, has been tested and rejected. In 1987, psychologist Robert Provine and colleagues published experiments in behavioral and neural biology, showing that breathing pure oxygen or air with elevated carbon dioxide did not change yawning rates, even though those gases clearly affected normal breathing. So if it's not oxygen, what is it? If this has ever made you wonder about the hidden signals your body sends, subscribe for more evidence-based explorations of human biology. Have you ever experienced a sudden, unexplained yawn in a quiet room, or while reading about yawning itself? Yawning is a stereotyped behavior, an involuntary sequence of mouth opening, deep inspiration, brief apnea, and slow expiration, often lasting about 6 seconds in humans, according to Provine's measurements. It appears across vertebrate species and has been conserved for hundreds of millions of years. Scientists became interested because it is both universal and poorly understood. Historical ideas date back at least to Hippocrates, who linked it to expelling bad air. Later, the oxygen and carbon dioxide hypothesis dominated popular belief. When that was experimentally disproven, researchers turned to other possibilities. The behavior occurs most often around sleep-wake transitions and during boredom, yet it also appears in high-arousal situations such as before a stressful event. Contagious yawning. The tendency for one person's yawn to trigger another's adds another layer. It has been observed in humans, chimpanzees, dogs, and some other social species, but not all animals, and it does not appear reliably in human infants until later childhood. This combination of physiological consistency and social variability has kept the phenomenon under scientific scrutiny for decades without a single fully accepted explanation. What is established is limited, but clear. The oxygen theory does not hold. Provine's 1987 studies and subsequent replications showed no significant change in yawning frequency under altered oxygen or carbon dioxide levels, and physical exercise that doubled breathing rate also left yawning unaffected. Yawning is controlled by mechanisms separate from ordinary respiration. Brain imaging and behavioral studies have linked yawning to transitions in arousal state. It frequently precedes or follows sleep, and can occur when attention wanes. A prominent competing hypothesis is the thermorgulatory theory proposed by Andrew Gallup and Gordon Gallup in a 2007 paper in Evolutionary Psychology. They suggested that the deep inhalation of cooler air combined with increased blood flow from jaw stretching helps cool the brain when its temperature rises. Supporting observations include reduced contagious yawning when participants breathed only through the nose, a route known to cool cranial blood, or applied cold packs to the forehead. Later comparative work found that yawn duration across species correlates with brain mass and cortical neuron number. Social research shows that contagious yawning is stronger among familiar individuals and may involve brain regions associated with social cognition, though the exact neural pathway remains incompletely mapped. These findings are verified observations and correlations. They do not yet constitute a complete causal account. Inside the body, a yawn recruits multiple systems. The jaw opens widely, stretching facial and neck muscles. A deep breath draws air through the mouth and nose. Blood flow to the skull increases, then venous return rises. Heart rate can briefly rise. In the thermorgulatory view, these actions may act like a temporary radiator for the brain, which is metabolically expensive and sensitive to temperature. The paraventricular nucleus of the hypothalamus and brainstem circuits involved in arousal and autonomic control appear implicated, though precise pathways are still being charted. For the contagious form, mirror neuron systems and regions linked to empathy and self-other processing show activity in some imaging studies, Yet not every experiment finds a clear empathy correlation. Age also influences susceptibility. Older adults are less likely to catch yawns. None of these mechanisms has been shown to be the sole driver. The body executes the same motor pattern, whether the trigger is internal, fatigue, temperature shift, or external, seeing or thinking about a yawn, which suggests a conserved motor program whose ultimate purpose science has not fully isolated. Researchers were surprised when the oxygen explanation, long treated as common knowledge, failed controlled tests. Provine's work in the 1980s forced a re-evaluation of a behavior almost everyone thought they understood. The thermoregulatory hypothesis later produced unexpected experimental results. Simply changing how people breathed or cooling the forehead nearly eliminated contagious yawning in laboratory settings. Comparative studies across dozens of species revealed that larger-brained animals tend to produce longer yawns, a pattern consistent with a cooling or circulatory function, but not predicted by purely social theories. At the same time, some analyses have questioned the strength of the contagion effect itself, arguing that methodological issues may have inflated earlier claims. These shifts illustrate how a seemingly simple everyday act can overturn assumptions when measured carefully. If you're finding these verified surprises valuable, consider liking this video and sharing it with someone who still thinks yawning is just about oxygen. It helps more people discover evidence-based science. Despite progress, no single explanation accounts for all observations. The thermoregulatory theory has experimental support and has not been contradicted by direct tests of its core predictions. Yet it does not fully explain why yawning occurs in cold environments or why fetuses yawn before they breathe air. The arousal or state change hypothesis fits the timing around sleep and boredom, but lacks a complete physiological mechanism. The social communication hypothesis explains contagion in group-living species, but does not address spontaneous yawning in solitary animals or in the womb. Contagious yawning itself shows high individual variability that age and familiarity only partially explain. Most of the difference remains unaccounted for. Competing theories coexist because each captures part of the data while leaving gaps. Science distinguishes what has been measured, the motor pattern, the disproof of the oxygen idea, correlations with brain size and temperature manipulations, from what remains hypothesis. The full functional story of why this ancient behavior persists is still open. A yawn is one of the most reliable yet least understood signals your nervous system produces. It begins with activity in brainstem and hypothalamic circuits that also regulate sleep-wake transitions and autonomic tone. The motor pattern is so stereotyped that its duration stays relatively stable within an individual across weeks. When the jaw opens and the diaphragm contracts for that deep inhalation, cranial blood flow changes. Gallup's work and follow-up studies, using thermography and temperature probes in animals, have recorded small but measurable drops in facial and brain temperature after yawns. In one line of research, a single yawn reduced brain temperature by roughly 0.1 degrees Celsius in experimental settings. Repeated yawns produced larger effects. These numbers come from controlled measurements, not speculation. At the same time, the same motor act can be triggered by purely social cues, seeing, hearing, or even reading about yawning. Functional imaging has shown activation in posterior cingulate and precuneus regions linked to self-processing, and in some studies areas associated with empathy. Yet other large samples find only weak or no correlation with empathy scores once age is controlled. Evolutionary continuity is striking. The basic pattern appears in jawed vertebrates dating back hundreds of millions of years, long before complex social cognition. Medical observations add further complexity. Excessive yawning has been noted in conditions involving thermoregulatory dysfunction, such as certain neurological disorders, and can appear as a side effect of some medications. The strongest scientific insight so far is that yawning is not a simple respiratory adjustment. It is a multi-system event involving circulation, temperature, arousal, and, in social species, possible group coordination. Yet the precise integration of these elements remains incomplete. Your body performs this act daily without your conscious command, executing a program that science can describe in parts, but not yet fully decode. Understanding that a behavior as ordinary as yawning still contains unresolved questions changes how we view the rest of our physiology. It reminds us that familiarity does not equal comprehension. Everyday actions we take for granted, the sudden stretch of the jaw, the contagious spread through a room, rest on biological machinery whose complete logic has not been mapped. This does not diminish the value of the partial explanations we do have. It highlights the difference between verified findings and remaining gaps. Recognizing that distinction helps us evaluate health claims, sleep advice, and popular science more carefully. It also underscores the continuity between human and non-human animals. The same basic motor pattern operates across vast evolutionary distances. Paying attention to these ordinary mysteries keeps scientific curiosity grounded in evidence rather than assumption. The open question remains: what is the primary selective pressure that has kept this precise sequence of muscle contractions, deep inhalation, and brief apnea conserved across hundreds of millions of years, and so many species? Is temperature regulation the core function, with social contagion a later overlay? Is state change the deeper driver? Or does the answer involve a combination that current experiments have not yet isolated? Science continues to test these possibilities without claiming final certainty. Which body mystery surprised you most in this exploration? If you want more documentary-style examinations of verified human biology and the questions that remain, subscribe and join the discussion in the comments. The next time a yawn arrives uninvited, you will know that your body is still carrying out a process that researchers, after decades of careful measurement, have not completely explained.